a pittance they call an allowance. The American healthcare system is a beast, a labyrinthine structure that often leaves patients and their families feeling lost and overwhelmed. We all know it's a tangled mess of bureaucracy, confusing bills, and frankly, it just plain sucks. The paperwork alone can be a nightmare, with bills that seem to come out of nowhere and charges that make no sense. But today, we're going to zoom in on a particularly egregious part of this mess: the insulting pittance given to patients in care facilities as their personal needs allowance. This allowance is supposed to cover their personal expenses, but it falls woefully short. We're talking about folks who, for whatever reason, need a little extra help. These are individuals who rely on the system for their daily needs and care. Maybe they're recovering from an illness, dealing with a disability, or facing long-term health challenges that make independent living difficult, or just navigating the challenges of aging, which can be a daunting task in itself. These are real people with real needs, and they deserve our respect and support. They are our parents, grandparents, friends, and neighbors. Yet, what do we give them? A paltry sum that barely scratches the surface of their needs. A measly allowance that wouldn't even cover a decent takeout meal, let alone provide for their personal comfort and dignity. Let alone the basic necessities of life. Things like toiletries, snacks, or even a small treat to brighten their day are often out of reach. It's a slap in the face to their dignity and a stark reminder of how little our system values their well-being. We must do better for those who depend on us the most. Trapped by the system, forgotten by the system. This is the harsh reality for many patients who find themselves at the mercy of a broken healthcare system. And where does KeyPoint Health Services, a major player in this system, stand? They are supposed to be the beacon of hope, the provider of care. Yet, they hide behind the flimsy excuse of state guidelines, using bureaucracy as a shield. "Oh, our hands are tied," they cry, as if that absolves them of responsibility. "We're just following the rules," they insist, as if rules are more important than human lives. Well, here's a newsflash. KeyPoint. Following the rules doesn't automatically make you ethical or compassionate. Compassion should be at the heart of healthcare. When those rules are clearly failing the very people you're supposed to be caring for, you have a moral obligation to speak up, to fight for better. Silence is complicity. Instead, KeyPoint chooses to prioritize profits over people. Their focus is on the bottom line, not the well-being of their patients. They'd rather keep their shareholders happy than ensure their patients have enough money for basic necessities like toiletries, phone calls, or even a small treat. Imagine the difference it would make if they prioritized human dignity and care. A small gift, a visit, or a cheerful phone call can brighten a patient's day and make them feel valued. $11 a week. An insult, not an allowance. Let's talk about this so-called allowance, shall we? $11 a week. It's almost laughable, but the reality is far from funny. That's less than $2 a day. Imagine trying to stretch that out to cover your daily needs. You know what you can buy with $2 these days? A cup of coffee. And that's if you're lucky enough to find a place that sells it that cheap. Maybe a pack of gum if you're lucky. But what about everything else? You're telling me that someone who's entrusted their health and well-being to KeyPoint Health Services has to survive on less than $2 a day for anything beyond the bare minimum of care? It's laughable. It's outrageous. It's downright inhumane. How can anyone maintain their dignity under such conditions? We're not talking about extravagant luxuries here. We're talking about the essentials that make life bearable. We're talking about the basic dignity of being able to afford a phone call to a loved one, a new toothbrush, or even a small personal item that brings comfort, or a magazine to pass the time. These small things can make a huge difference in someone's day. We're talking about the difference between feeling like a human being and feeling like a prisoner in your own life. It's about respect, it's about humanity, and it's about time we did something to change this. Section 4. Who does KeyPoint actually serve? So, KeyPoint, I have to ask, who are you really serving in this complex healthcare landscape? Is it the state, with its woefully inadequate guidelines and regulations? Is it your bottom line, your precious profits, that drive your decisions? Or is it the patients, the human beings, who rely on you for their care and well-being every single day? Because right now, it sure as hell doesn't feel like it's the patients you're prioritizing. It feels like they're an afterthought, a line item on a budget, a problem to be managed rather than people to be genuinely cared for. And let's be clear, this isn't just about KeyPoint and its practices. This is about a system that consistently fails the most vulnerable among us, time and time again. But KeyPoint, you have a choice to make a real difference. You can continue to be complicit in this broken system, or you can choose to do better.